Children, let's begin from stanza 3 onwards. So let's read. High on the shore sate the great god Pan, while turbidly flowed the river, and hacked and hewed as a great god can, with his hard bleak steel at the patient reed, till there wasn't a sign of a leaf indeed to prove it fresh from the river. Now, here we see that the speaker tells us in the third stanza that Pan is now sitting high on the shore, and we get an impression that Pan, sate is Old English for sat. So, sitting on some type of throne, we get an impression that he is like a god, great god Pan, who is sitting not on the shore but on a throne high above the rest of the creatures around him. So the river has already turned turbid, that is muddy, polluted by the sudden violent act of the boy, Pan, removing the reed from the riverbed. Here we feel that this boy is about to do some kind of mischief again. We anticipate of what will still come next. At the same time, we will soon find out the purpose of the boy pulling out violently the reed from the riverbed. Now, and hacked and hewed as a great god can, with his hard, bleak steel at the patient reed. Now, here the next scene is describing the way this boy violently behaves and pulls out the reed. So, what is he doing? The speaker is describing the process of hacking and hewing. That is, he's pulling at the reed, and what the boy is doing with the reed. So he is describing it here. He becomes clear that he wishes to create something out of the reed. So Pan proceeds to mangle the reed. So he's hacking at the reed, he's mangling the reed, and by hacking it with a black, hard, look at the word here, hard, black, bleak steel. So the steel is bleak. Now, steel is personified here. Again, personification is used here where the speaker or the poet is personifying steel. So, steel is an agent, a helping hand, or someone who is aiding, meaning helping Pan in creating a bleak situation here. So he gives rough cuts. So hewed as a great god can. So what is he doing? He's giving rough cuts on it and hewed as a great god can. One who is able to commit such an act with power. He uses hard bleak steel, suggesting that he must be powerful and strong to hack at the reed so thoroughly. So Pan begins to tear apart the reed. He hollows out the reed by removing its contents or removing the pith from inside. So the reed is depicted as a patient reed. This is very important that the reed is being called a patient reed because it highlights its calm innocence nature and complete lack of power over its fate. Pan violently hacks at the reed away until no sign of a leaf is found. So, a sign of a leaf is symbol of life, which can be found. So, the reed no longer looks fresh. It says till there was not a sign of a leaf indeed to prove it fresh from the river. So, till there was no sign of the leaf. And the leaf did not look fresh from the river. Now, it is now lifeless. It is like a lifeless creature until no witnesses to its former vitality. So, the reed has become virtually unidentifiable. The speaker says that one can no longer tell that it has just come from out of the river. Such is the condition of the reed here. So, if one considers the myth, this powerful scene, this whole scene is very powerful and is reminiscent of a man torturing, taking advantage or even killing a woman. Pan is harming. Now, this is one interpretation. And the second one, Pan is, here we can see in the myth we have Syrinx being tortured, or Syrinx, as in the myth, she's being robbed of all her power while she quietly and patiently succumbs to him like a patient reed. And the third interpretation here is on a greater level, where one can read the scene as a criticism of Victorian ideals about women. Women were considered inferior to men, and they were considered as objects of beauty. So, this is the third interpretation. And the fourth interpretation, where the role of an artist. Now, this interpretation is very powerful and important, where the role of the poet or an artist is depicted. The reed symbolizes the poet, an artist, or a writer, etc., who goes on calmly creating a work of art, and in the process completely finishes off himself. So there is sacrifice. So in order to create a thing of beauty, one has to sacrifice. But as school students, we would just take the first simple interpretation of the boy Pan, mischievously pulling out the reed, and after muddying the water sits down to craft or make something out of the reed. Now, I hope you have clearly understood this stanza. So what's the recap? We have just said it. The boy Pan pulling out a reed, and while pulling it out, muddying the water, and then sits down to craft something out of the reed. Now let's go to the fourth stanza. He cut it short, did the great god Pan. How tall it stood in the river. Then drew the pith like the heart of a man, steadily from the outside ring, and notched the poor dry, empty thing in holes as he sate by the river. So here we have the poet or the speaker explains how Pan begins to cut the reed shorter. So what has he done? He has begun to cut it shorter. He has made it shorter. And once again the speaker says, he repeats the great god Pan, possibly to continue the rhythm of the poem. Now, how tall it stood in the river. So after stating that Pan cut the reed short, the speaker makes an unexpected exclamation. So look at the exclamation mark. So he recalls how tall the reed was when it stood in the river. So before Pan cut it down. Here, by placing this thought in parenthesis, I think you have understood, brackets. So while placing it in brackets, why did he place it in bracket? The speaker is telling us his own personal views. So that's why it is kept in brackets. He laments the fact that the reed no longer stands tall in the river, or as Pan has torn it out and cut it short, it has been reduced to so little, like a human being who once stood tall and confident. The reed has now been beat little by the god Pan. Then drew the pith like the heart of a man, steadily from the outside ring. So in the following scene, Pan continues to tear apart the reed. The description is chilling, evoking an image of a surgeon at work. So the surgeon is going about his work. Pan hollows out the reed by removing its inside. His actions are rough and methodical, as he seems to have planned this act all along. The hollowing of the reed or the removal of the pith. Now what is the pith? The inside, inner part. So this is compared to the removal of the heart of a man. The impression that the reed has been killed. So this is the impression the speaker gives us. It is now lifeless and helpless. So the speaker expresses compassion for the reed, referring to it as poor, dry, empty thing, and notched. So steadily from the outside ring, he is giving notches, and notched the poor, it says here, notched the poor, dry, empty thing. So what has he done? The reed is devoid of life now, and he has carved out, notched means he has carved out small holes into it. And as he sat, again sat is old English for sat by the river. So in the context of the myth, one could read this scene as Syrinx losing her very lifeblood, dry empty thing, becoming a dry empty thing. So she's losing her very lifeblood and soul. In addition, the speaker also emphasizes the power of man to cause deliberate destruction, also is highlighted in this stanza. So I hope you have understood this, and therefore I conclude it here. Thank you.